Light spoilers inbound, you have been warned. Soul is easily one of the better Disney Pixar films that I've had the pleasure of viewing in quite some time. But that's not to say it's perfect. In an era where the company seems to be more concerned with producing sequels and cash grabs, this is a nice return to form in many ways. I have no doubt that it's been said long before I'm about to, but it's almost as if Soul has soul. I genuinely think it's worth watching at least once, so I'll keep this review relatively spoiler-free so that you can experience it yourself. But I do want to talk about what did and did not work. Director Pete Docter did an excellent job at presenting our two main characters struggling to find their purpose and a sense of belonging in the world. As such, I'm left feeling generally good about the writing. Both 22 and Joe had character arcs that get explored in satisfying detail, and by the end of the movie, you might even want to see more out of them. But for the love of God, please don't make an unnecessary series out of this. Quite a few times my expectations on where the plot was taking me were subverted, but I'm sorry to say that this doesn't last forever. At the end of the day, Disney Pixar can't escape the tropes they've built for themselves, and this is yet another movie they've produced where two characters go on a life-changing adventure, briefly split up over some disagreement, and then inevitably reunite in time to save each other's lives from something awful that's about to happen. At first, I was willing to forgive Soul for this, but honestly, the more I think about it, the more disappointed I become. When the film isn't following the typical Disney Pixar formula, it's so well done. It just didn't need this kind of structure because the writing, concepts, and characters were strong enough to deliver us something entirely new. In many ways, adhering to the same old feels like a disservice to what was being accomplished without it. When we're not following the average formula, the movie shines, with much of the runtime spent exploring the developing mindsets of our protagonists through emotional and dialogue-heavy scenes. Even the humor was pretty enjoyable, and interestingly enough, I felt like many of the jokes were geared towards the millennial or at least older Generation Z audience. And it was about halfway through the movie that I began to wonder if my 9-year-old niece would be smiling as much as I was watching it. A lot of the jokes were referential to things I think only those who have experienced the crushing weight of existential pain that comes along with adulthood would understand. Well, that's an exaggeration, but after you watch the movie, you'll probably see what I'm talking about. Was that a gag about Marie Antoinette having been beheaded and let them eat cake then? It probably goes without saying, but both the sound design and animation were pretty good. Moments like this did an excellent job at pulling me into the environment and helping me feel what our main characters were experiencing. Aside from that, when the movie wasn't featuring well-paced, quiet scenes, which included soft yet meaningful dialogue, you're treated to a combination of tonally appropriate, smooth, and/or energetic jazz. It's all very well done, and I even found myself listening to the soundtrack after watching this movie. Jon Batiste did an excellent job in particular, and hopefully his work in this movie encourages a wider audience of people to seek out and support less mainstream jazz music. As far as the artwork and animation goes, I thought some of the more abstract character designs were different and offered a fun change of pace compared to the more realistic and grounded in reality Earthbound environments. The animation was really standing out in those realistic settings though, with a few scenes including near photorealistic backgrounds and top-notch lighting that actually added to the textures of the characters that we're watching. It's always interesting to see how Pixar movies improve upon themselves in this sense, and I'm curious to know what audiences will think of this movie's artwork in 10 to 20 years from now. I went into this movie without a lot of enthusiasm. I didn't follow production, I hadn't watched a single trailer, and I didn't see any reviews. It was very much a blind and spur-of-the-moment decision to watch, and despite its shortcomings, I'm still pleasantly surprised, and this is something I can see myself viewing again later down the road. I really think it's worth giving an honest chance, even if you're not all that happy with the newer Disney Pixar movies. As I said earlier, it fails to deliver something entirely new, but it does still offer enough originality and genuinely compelling themes that I think anybody can relate to. I can't say for certain yet if Pixar is making a comeback, starting with this film, but at the very least, it's a nice return to form after sequel baiting with things like Finding Dory, Cars 3, and Monsters University. Overall, it's above average in many ways, but gets caught in the undertow of corporate executives, likely forcing the studio to include the same story beats that we're all used to by now, which is pretty lame, and so I'm giving Soul a 6 out of 10.